Lonesome Lands podcast, uh, November 18th, 2:45 p.m., 2025. Here we go. Go to lonesomelands.com, click on support. You can find options there to support what we're doing here. Kicking around like ideas, weren't sure really what to talk about. I feel like there's just an overall feeling. One of the things I saw on social media before I got on here was that cattle I guess cattle producers or Trump is losing cattle producers or they're losing faith in Donald Trump or something like that. And as I got to thinking about that, it was kind of like that's just kind of the overall feeling. I feel like people are just jumpy and they don't trust what's coming out and he's gonna screw this up and he's gonna screw that up and every other thing. And it's like this is kind of like the anniversary of he was picking his cabinet, I guess, at this time last year, or we were all speculative of who would be in his cabinet last year. And I think almost think too, I guess you can chime in. Do you think I think there's people who want the cattle industry to lose faith in Trump, right?
Absolutely.
And this administration and the way things are headed. Um, I think it's being pushed. Like we have a meat packer investigation has, the NCBA, who, whether you want to call them the biggest organization or not, or whatever, they don't, I still don't know if they've commented on it. I haven't seen them comment on it. We have a USDA plan to fortify the beef industry and strengthen cattle ranches. I
Right.
haven't seen them comment that. I haven't looked lately, but I mean, for at least 2 weeks, they said absolutely nothing about that. Like we have these positive things that's coming out of this administration, but then something comes out where, like, he's on Friday, it was announced that he was going to rescind the tariffs from Brazil.
That's
That
right.
was, the screenshot got thrown all around, and everybody thought, oh no, the everything was going to fall in on us, and then it comes out that it wasn't actually. It was like a much less of a thing than what was first reported, but I think there is this push to, um, just delegitimize the president and this kind of pushback against him because of one sentence that he said, which was, I mean, and he has said it repeatedly, but he has said beef is too high.
Well,
Price of beef is too high.
right. Yeah. And he has said the price of beef is too high. But I think if we're going to be fair about this, we've got to go back to what the catalyst was, the trigger for the original tweet that started this downfall on October 16th. We have lost $71 out of the November feeder board, a 15% drop. We've lost about 12% in the live market, and these are real at these price levels. These are real values. I mean, this is huge amounts of money, but we have to go back to the very beginning and say, what was the catalyst of what was going on? Well, he says, President Trump said, beef prices in the store are too high. We have to make it more consumer friendly. And without understanding that no matter what he did, beef prices in the store are not going down. It's just not going to happen. He talked about opening it up, more imports from Argentina. And then, we had the one trade organization group in DC invited. They turned him down and insulted him, absolutely insulted him. And that was the trigger that sent the market's reeling because President Trump is the type of guy that's not going to stay quiet. And he tweeted on that. Now, he should have stayed quiet because really they don't have any business putting their putting their thoughts and opinions into a very volatile supply and demand issue. I mean, the beef industry, we're supposed to be working on a capitalistic form here, and when you have a powerful man like that tweeting something out, it is going to affect the market, especially as high as the market was. We have to remember these November feeder cattle, and I'm talking on the CME, were as high as 381.80, the highest level in history when this happened.
And what
And
are they
so
today?
305 or 6. So where we were a little bit top heavy. We had gained that momentum for a long time. A lot of bulls in the market. It was great. So then when the most powerful man in the world gets ticked off and he puts a tweet out there, it's going to have some sort of effect on it, right? And so then we go down and it stays pretty volatile. We would have a limit down day, and then had a few limit up days, and then it was more like two steps down and one step back up. He then announced that they were going to investigate the beef packers. That was 2 weeks ago, this coming Friday. And that, again, you know, from the outside perspective as a cattle rancher, we were all like, most of us independent people were like, heck yeah, it's time. I mean, there's no better time, even because we are on a high. I mean, we've gotten a lot of money for these calves. We have some leverage. Let's do it. When is a bad time? Well, then the feeding sector of the industry, these independent feeding sector, are like, this ain't the time. This is not the time to do this. We should have done this in 20, which, by the way, he did call for an investigation in 2020 that went nowhere. We have several different lawsuits from different organizations out there calling for investigations. And we have, three of the four main packers in 2025 settling for 250, I think it was 200, I figured it up, it's $250 million dollars. Maybe it was closer to 500 in price fixing settlements. And so we have this big hodgepodge of craziness going on. And so everybody's kind of reeling. Cattle country wants to support Trump. We're mostly conservatives, but there is a sector of the big business people that want to destroy him, right? That's just the way it is. They want to destroy him because he's focusing on independent production. And then last Friday, he tweeted again, and he says, we're going to relax the tariffs, right? Coming from Brazil. Well, people put that two and two together. They're going to relax the tariffs coming from Brazil. Brazil owns two of our major packing companies, the largest being JBS. And that did not set well with the producers again. So everybody panicked last Friday and said, the board will be down the limit on Monday. Well, it wasn't down the limit. In fact, it was up. Not the limit, but it went up. And the reason it went up, Jim, was because his announcement didn't go deep enough. It was not, the announcement itself is critical, but what's more critical is for us to understand how deep that goes. And so at the end of the day, it wasn't as big of a tariff reduction as everybody thought it was going to be. Really, there was going to be no change, and the markets reacted appropriately to that. So it is unfortunate that we are in a position where people have lost, $70 in the market. The cattle are bringing, $200 to $500 a head less, but it's still a super strong market. And I'm saying that compared to October 16th because the cash market this week's on fire. Everywhere I call, it's on fire. There's a lot of bullishness in it. And I think the overall theme here is it doesn't matter what President Trump did, it's not going to lower the prices in the store. Those retailers set those prices, and the only people that are going to dictate that are the consumers. They're going to tell us where the price point is that they do not want to buy beef in the store again. And we do need to go forward with this investigation. There's not a better time. There's never going to be a good time for it. We have to have the big four, but we don't want them colluding and price fixing. I mean, if anybody says they're not price fixing, then all we have to do is a short Google search to see what kind of settlements they've come up with this year, right? So these are real things that affect independent production across the board. The calls I've gotten this week or in the last 2 days, especially from feeders, are, I wish he'd stay out of our business, let it go, and let it maneuver itself through its natural cycles. And then, a couple sale barn owners are like, hell yeah, let's investigate them. These guys, we gotta fix this system. Because at the end of the day, all of this has resulted in fewer producers. And we talk about it all the time. There's no need to talk about it every day, Jim. But the result of what has happened over the last decades has resulted in fewer producers on the land, and so that is where we're at to today on the market. The market was stagnant today, but the cash market's pretty much it's pretty high. It's running off a little bit, and I'm just talking about comparatively. I'm not saying it's at that price level where when November feeders were at 381, but certainly these calves are costing a lot more this week. So it's wild, it's woolly, it's the Wild West. I think that the focus that we all have to remember is to look beyond our industry and look beyond what is happening just on our ranch here, because this picture goes beyond all of that. This picture is a picture of liberty and freedom and the future for future of our kids. That's what this picture is. And yes, he's going to tick us off, and he's going to make us mad. He's not a perfect person, but I still say the reason I like Trump is because I hate communism. And I can see with all of my advocacy and the calls I get every day, which in fact, I know there's a lot of our friends watching this that have told me, and I am going to get back to every one of them. It takes a bit because I'm still running my ranch, but these people are the bad people are doubling down in terms of property rights and our ability to produce food on our land. And this has everything to do with Trump. It has everything to do with the big four Packers. It has everything to do with the monopolistic plays by these global corporate companies, whether it's the Packers or the retail sector or whatever. This is all about a reduction of production on the land. And, as many calls as I'm getting for help, and we're trying to send them to the right places, uh, this is a sign for me that the ideologues have doubled down and that they are coming after our way of life, even with Trump in, or I guess especially with Trump in, because I think the worry is that we will place reforms, long term reforms in policy that will affect their ability to come after us down the road when we're doing that in this administration. And certainly we do have the people, with the Secretary of Interior working with the Secretary of Agriculture and the Department of Justice. They are all focusing on liberty and freedom through independence. And I think it's a good thing. So, yes, there's volatility in the market. Yes, anybody can say one thing, and the market can and will react, especially with the volume that's in the market. And then we have to talk about who is playing in the market. Those global corporate companies are playing in the market. And then we have to talk about something that I do not understand, and that's algorithms. But once those algorithms start kicking in, it gets really violently volatile. And you'll have to get an expert on here to talk about that because I just don't understand how algorithms work, other than it's kind of like a domino effect, right? So lots going on, man.
Yeah. And one thing I guess that kind of pops in my mind when I see that, starting to Trump starting to lose support or whatever, is this whole notion that we need to unify, right? We have to unify. And you talked about somebody, a cattle feeder. I don't talk to people on the phone like you do, and I prefer not to. Um, but I did talk to one and it was a great conversation. Not that I agreed with. I mean, we pretty much disagreed on everything, but one thing that was great was he came out and he was like, he goes, "You guys talk about 107,000 less producers on the land." He goes, "That's good for me." And I think there is in the higher end of, there is not a unification in ideas in the cattle industry. And I'm not saying there should be or anything else, but where we're coming from is from an overall industry perspective and
Mhm.
overall independence. Like the things we talk about are how do we remain as independent as we can, and also can we build, do what's best for the rural communities, and do what's best for, the overall everybody. But if you're a rancher or a cattle feeder and you're looking at this market and you're hearing about 100,000, 107,000 less small cattle farms and ranches over the last 5 years is what the U.S. has lost, according to the USDA, and you now see this market, you're probably like, this is great, right? Like, we've lost all those producers. We have the smallest herd ever. Prices are great. I'm making money. This is the best thing that could have happened.
Mhm.
And for me, it's just hard to wrap my head around that. And also, when you get into this unification, and I think, these elitists that have these ideas like, oh, that it's good, it's not that bad of a thing to lose 107,000. Like, as NCBA, I've never seen NCBA post one single thing ever about the loss of small cattle farms and ranches over the last 5 years, right? And that's National Cattlemen's Beef Association. It is run by the elites of the industry. I don't think they care. And when I look at the last 5 years also, um, I did this, I gave a speech in Montana, it'll be up. But as I was going through it, I just wrote out a timeline. 2021 NCBA, worst cattle market ever. We're probably losing the majority of those 107,000 in that
Mhm.
time frame.
During that time period.
They come out of their convention with their top priority, climate neutrality by the year 2040.
Right.
That's their priority.
Mhm.
2022, I believe the EID mandate, something happened in 2022. I can't remember what it was, but it was every year something towards this whole climate initiative,
Mhm.
which I believe the EID is directly, I mean, it is the
Oh,
number one
absolutely.
tool. I think 2022 is Climate Smart Commodity Project was announced in 2022. And then in 2023, USDA announced, so in the Climate Smart Commodity Project was setting up a system where everyone measures their
Mhm.
greenhouse gases. And
Mhm.
in the ranching community, all of that measurement and data would be verified through EID tags. So the next year, 2023, USDA comes out with a mandated EID tag rule. The
Mhm.
next year, NCB, and then they give NCBA 445,000 to increase traceability or whatever in the herds, which means promote EID tags.
Right.
The next year, NCBA tries to push through their convention, mandated EID tags on all cattle. It doesn't happen, but the actual EID tag rule does get pushed through, and
Right.
and NCBA says, well, we weren't for it, but we were all for the USDA. We lobbied hard for the USDA to pay for those tags, which they didn't pay for all those tags. They didn't even, I think, maybe two-thirds of the amount of money that was going to be needed for those tags.
Mhm.
Um, but anyway, when you look at those issues and how the like what we call the elites of the cattle industry, when you think of like we've talked a lot about the key gym and the black shirt feeders and these
Right.
massive cattle feeding, the Five Rivers, the Beef Alliance, really, right? Like these massive cattle feeders. And then you think about uniting the cattle industry. Like, I don't want to unite with those people, right? I think that they're happy that 107, one of them told, I mean, it wasn't, the biggest of the
Well,
big, but one of them definitely told me, he was like 100 less producers on the land is good for me.
and the reason it is because we have offshored our beef production or our beef intake for so long that we just expect, like, I can see where he's coming from. I understand
Yeah.
where he's
He's coming from completely a self. He looks at himself,
self.
his
Right.
operation, what he wants.
That's
And
right.
if, he's a younger guy. I don't know that he has kids or whatever, but yeah, I mean, and I just think of myself. Look, when you start up a business and you're young, it's like something happens, I think, when you hit 40 or your late 30s, where it's kind of like, I'm not gonna be around forever, and your kids are getting older, and it's like that's when I started the Lonesome Lands. That's when I started this website. It's like the businesses I had run, mainly one through the years, it was no longer top priority anymore.
Well, I think there's just a lot of complex issues that have something to do with that. And offshoring our beef production is one of those. That's a national security issue. I think that people not being tied to their community, in other words, not having roots deep into their community, is another one. I mean, we talked about that with Key Jim. Has no roots into these communities at all. He doesn't care. He's about self, right? He's about how much money can I make, and I think that's these all of these issues, as complex as they are, do have everything to do with this web that we're talking about. Because, I mean, if I was a feeder, and I would not be, I would say, yeah, the fewer people that are out there, the bigger piece of the pie I get, right?
Hmm.
And then, if I'm not tied to my community, I'm like, who cares? Just that community doesn't mean anything to me. But I think that's the difference between independent production and these people who are, um, you know, influenced by other things, right? Because by and large, the American cattle producer, the American cattle rancher, is deeply tied to the land. And most of them, I don't know what percentage it would be, Jim, but most of them are on the land or near the land that those who came before settled, right? And so they have this deep, deep tie, to the land, and they love their local communities. You just don't see the movement of farmers and ranchers around the nation like, I mean, and I'm talking cattle producers that need the land to run the cattle on and farm on. They don't move around like these other people move around, and I think that's got, something to do with all of that. Everybody's got a different view and a different, perspective of why, they see things the way they do, and I can't argue with any of it. But from my perspective, and I feel like from your perspective, we feel like America is better, safer, and more bullishly equipped when we take care of our homes and our local communities first. And we have to do that, we have to be stabilized. And if we're not stabilized, then all hell breaks loose, right?
Well, also,
And
you always talk about independence. Like when you think about that, like if we're all just employees, if you look at how things go, um, it's like you don't care as much about your community as the independent people. I think independence is important.
the key thing to understand, though, is that if we uphold independence, that's why we live in a constitutional republic, is because the individual rights supersede all of everything else. Because when the individual is successful, everything else becomes successful.
Anyway, I just feel like that's kind of where the topics are headed. I don't know. I mean, as far as
Well, and let me point something else out besides those deep rooted independence, which is very important. The human condition is never going to find unity. It's a broken world. Nobody is ever going to unite, and I don't care what industry it's in. To say that we're going to unite our industry is gibberish. It's not going to ever happen because everybody has different ideas. And you know what? If we didn't, what kind of world would we be living in right now, right? I mean, it's easy to say that we need to unite and come together, but it's really hard, to get everybody on the same page and say, "Yeah, we're united." When one guy over here is saying, "Yeah, this is what we need to do," and the other guy over here is saying, "No, this is what we need to do to get there." Everybody's different.
yeah, one thing that's frustrating to me too is I feel like because I've studied this stuff more, I don't think most cattle producers realize how invested in this methane reduction, global greenhouse gas emission measurement that the
Hmm.
real big players in the beef industry were. And I don't think they wanted
Are
anyone to know. Yeah, are. And I don't
yeah.
think they, it wasn't, I mean, there, you definitely saw the articles in the magazines and certain things like that. But, And so it's real interesting to me, like when you have these big players in the Angus Association and they want to form this new organization with this Common Ground Coalition right after Trump gets inaugurated, and they don't want to talk about EIDs or any of this other stuff. Like it's almost like they don't want you to talk about certain things.
Well, and
And
again, that goes back to the individual, and perhaps it goes back to the selfishness of the individual, because those big companies, those conglomerate companies, and we talked about this already when in terms of the dairy people, like that when those 7 gentlemen got killed out there on that dairy in Colorado. Uh, so much income from the climate smart commodity program that the dairy didn't matter, right?
well,
And
the when I looked up the methane digester for that dairy, the company that was putting it in had a whole article and it said they planned on making $20 million a year
right.
off of the methane coming out of that dairy.
Right.
And I don't think people can really,
Well, how much did the milk make? That's what I want to know.
yeah, I
You
know,
know,
but even,
that's the whole thing, is they're using these as props and catalysts to go after that taxpayer dollar, and that's what it is
yeah.
taxpayer
And
dollar.
when you look at this unifying the cow, I think the Angus Association deal is the perfect example. Like they took money from Jeff Bezos' Climate Hub, Earth
Hmm.
Fund. It's all climate centric, and they didn't tell anybody that they did it, and they didn't tell
Yeah.
their members. They just did it. And
Yeah.
that is just such a perfect example because they were kind of, the guys that run that association are the elites type in the industry
Hmm.
who think that they know better than everybody else.
Hmm.
And they're also keyed in on this methane and how much,
Absolutely.
if, the Biden Harris kind of plan, the Tom Vilsack, United Nations, World Economic Forum
Hmm.
plan
Right.
continued, this reduction of greenhouse gas emission, if you can verify that, was going to be worth more than raising cattle. And so, I mean, I think that there still is a push to hopefully get that plan back in
Well, and
place.
I think, you and I were you were just talking about, you thought that there was a sector of the agriculture industry that wanted to destroy Trump, or to take Trump's down, or to limit his support. And that's the key players right there, right? I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
those are the people.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, I've had a lot of people talk to me about this volatile market and what's running it up and down, and several of people that I call experts just are hell bent on saying, this is the time that they're gonna give us the hog moment, and we've talked about that before too, into vertical integration, and certainly the amount of money we're talking about is incredible. I talked to a gentleman last night that said he had 2 friends in the Texas Panhandle commit suicide because they lost so much value in their positions on the CME. I did not ask questions out of respect, but
Recently, like this fall.
yeah, yeah, just recently, and I hope that's not the case.
Well,
I
that's a
hope
lesson too. I mean,
it is an absolute lesson,
you're walking
because
into a casino. I mean, that's
he
the thing
well
that people think don't realize either.
but yes, you are. And you are positioned to pay the price of your risk. That's who we are. However, at these levels and at this volatility, when the CME, I used to have to sign an agreement with the CME saying that I had the cattle to cover these positions. That ain't happening no more, Jim. That's a
No.
whole different story. And so there's some reform that needs, and I'm a hedger. I use it. I mean, I want to use it. I want to protect it. It's cost me a lot of money, lost opportunities, made some money, all that. But I always had the animals to cover that. But the one thing that he's saying that we're not talking about with these volatility and this double down is the mental health aspect of it, and that's a whole different case for a whole different show. But certainly, when these people say, this feels an awful lot like the hog moment, and these are people I have high regard for, that have decades of experience saying this, I take it to heart, and I'm like, all right, well, from what I see, and I'm an advocate for private property, from what I see, I agree with that, because these people, these organizations, these monopolies, these oligarchs, these global corporate cartel are doubling down in taking through public-private partnerships and other partnerships taking production off the land. And I've got a whole host of them. I mean, I've got all of these papers, of instances, people needing help that they're coming after us. Shad, I just got off the phone with a gal from Minnesota talking about how Tim Walz passed a law that they could no longer move farm deer across state lines, effectively ending their animal ownership under the guise of chronic wasting disease. He also changed that law that was put into place, amended that law to not allow when a producer died, their family to inherit the operation. That's what Hitler did too. We've got these cases in Colorado. We've got them in the King Ranch right now in Washington State is under this horrible investigation and fines. The case with the Forest Service in Colorado, interwoven into the State Land Board and their new executive director. We've got one from Montana that's called me twice, and I haven't got back to him. I got one in South Dakota I've got to get a hold of, one in Wyoming. There's two in Arizona, two in New Mexico. These people all need help, right? Because these are true issues. And what has happened is, as we've taken people off the land, we've lost leverage. And that's what's happened.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think it's not all interwoven. It is all interwoven. And that's what me and you have to help people understand is that this oligarchy, this control from these big packers and other global corporations are complicit in all of this. And
Yeah.
on top of that, our federal government is complicit. Congress is complicit because they've allowed the acquisitions and mergers. The former administration is complicit because they pushed agendas and used their power in an abusive way to push their agendas. And that's what we saw with the Mod case, right? That's what we saw with the King case right now in Washington, D.C., or in Washington State. So it's all interwoven, and it's, again, I say, as an independent rancher, you have to look beyond the moment in this market. It does matter. This is our way of life. We have to
Yeah, you gotta look behind today's social media tweet by Trump or whatever. Like you have to
yes,
look at where we were headed and what we have now.
yes,
And like as you know, you and me kick around ideas because we're getting to the end of the year and it's these are the kind of times where you're the kind of I mean, as far as me, it's like, what the hell are we doing here? Sometimes we have those thoughts and it's like looking forward, like how can we be a valuable, how can Lonesome Lands have value to people, right? We'd say it at the beginning of the podcast, like support us, right? But to
mhm,
me, it's like as I'm coming to the end of the year and we're getting more and more subscribers, and it's kind of like, how can I make this valuable to people? And like all the property rights work, we talk about how I don't think people realize the methane deal. I also don't think people realize the real attack on ranching in public lands, just
private
overall.
lands.
Like this Western watersheds movement, that thing got some traction this week where they talked about how they want to get all. There was a post where they said, "Are you tired of stepping in cow pies when you're out hiking? Join us to get rid of cattle grazing on public lands." And
Mhm.
that organization has been, they are their wheels are spinning on how to get cattle
Absolutely.
off of public lands. And you talk about reducing ranchers, and how many we've lost. If you're going to close off public lands to grazing, I mean, that would
Well,
just
but
be
what does that
devastating.
do? What does that do for the global corporates? It
Right,
gives them less and less people to have to deal with, right? They get what they want. They are the true price
right,
makers,
yeah.
right? And then these
And they
serfs
can
left on the
import,
land.
they can
That's
keep
right.
clear cutting the rainforest,
That's
import as
exactly.
much beef as they want from Brazil, and
Exactly.
still have $10 hamburger, right? Like what
That's
everybody's
exactly
talking
right.
about this week.
I'll just tell you this right now. Trump ain't a perfect man, but I support him. And you know why I support him. But there is good news in all of this. Yesterday, America First Policy Institute launched their Lawfare Advisory Council. And I was able to join in on that call and cover that. was a huge, huge deal. It's a lot like the porthole that Secretary Rollins introduced for landowners who are suffering abuses. What this coalition of people, which include Tate Bennett, Brett Tolman, David Bernhardt, Sarah Phelan Tate, John Rich, the country music singer,
Big and
Todd,
rich.
yeah, the Todd Rokita, the Indiana Attorney General, Daniel Epstein, Hayden Ballard is on this coalition. What they're going to do is they've sat down and they've created this awareness model that are going to allow these producers who are suffering abuses by the bureaucracy, the state and federal governments, ENGOs, NGOs, and they're going to be this sounding board, and they're going to help them muddle through all of these problems that they're having and maybe introduce them to those who can help them. And more importantly, on a broader note, they're going to help create and push policy that would protect these farmers and ranchers and rural America on a long-term basis. So that was kind of fun, being on a call with, Brett Tolman, who was instrumental in the mod case, getting them off. And then Big and Rich, like John Rich, he helped Secretary Rollins with the property rights issue in Tennessee. But the fact is that we have organizations that are focusing on America first, liberty and freedom, who are willing to step out there and help and show that the American rancher and farmer, those people in rural America who are often forgotten, it shows that they have not been forgotten. And they
Yeah.
truly, truly admire and respect those who produce our food. Period.
Goes with we should mention also America First Policy Institute is where Brooke Rollins comes from, right? Like she was the CEO of
That
that, isn't that right?
that
That's the
she's the
one.
founder. She
Yeah,
was
the
the founder.
founder. And
Mhm.
so when you look at that and you think about the mod case and where they were headed, right? Like during a Biden-Harris administration, they were headed to prison, right? They were
Absolutely.
going to go to prison, charged with these things for offense that they never moved. And now they own that property. They have been able to find a resolution through that, and people talk about, well, Trump's losing support in the cattle industry because of a couple social media posts. We got to look at the big picture on that kind of stuff too. And I'm not saying, Trump isn't running again, so it's going to be somebody else. But when you come up to, when you look at like this Gavin Newsom, who apparently is a Democrat frontrunner, I mean, the things he would do as far as climate and destruction of rural
Another just
America
Yep.
are, I mean, you got to keep that stuff in mind when you're,
You have to.
and I'm
You
not
have
saying
to.
blindly follow, but you know,
Well, I mean,
there's
look at the
there's a bigger
dams.
picture than the market today or tomorrow or any other, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, look at Potter Valley. Look at the water takings out in California. Look at what's happening in Colorado. I just talked about this deal in Minnesota. And if you think that that issue is not going to mumble its way into the beef industry, because rumor has it
Well, that was
that
said. Apparently, it was said that the video that went out said that Tim Walz, or it was said during a court proceeding that they believed that they could ban beef.
the
Um,
yes, that's exactly what he said. That's what I was just going to say. He said that they wanted to ban beef and meat production due to climate change. That's what the beginning of this
right.
is, and the Minnesota Deer Farmers Association have brought that to light. And so I applaud them for that, and hopefully they can contact us and give us more information on that. But all of this spreads like wildfire. It just spreads. I mean, we saw the issue with the ostriches in Canada, where the federal government goes in and kills all of these ostriches.
I got
We
emailed on that. Can you break that down for me? What was the
Well, real
ostrich?
quick, like there was a private ostrich farm that had a lot of ostriches back during um, COVID or somewhere around there, 2, 3, 4 years ago, and they were hit with the bird disease. What's it called? The
Bird?
avian flu.
Oh, right.
And so several of those animals died. This is the way I understand the story. Several of those animals died, and so the federal government comes in and says, "Well, we're going to have to kill all of them." Well, this is 4 years later, and the remaining animals, which are a bunch, are immune to it, right? They've lived through it. So they have the natural immunity to it. Federal government goes in last week and kills those animals. That is what spreads. That kind of tyranny spreads. And, we talk about the use of EID all the time. Dude, this is all looking very familiar to me. So,
Yeah, and it is kind of hard sometimes to take ostriches seriously, but that was a bad deal.
no,
There's
it
video of
doesn't
that
matter if
place.
it's an ostrich or a lion or what it is. It is private property.
Oh yeah.
The basis of
I'm just saying
I'm
ostriches are
just
a
telling
goofy
you,
looking bird.
I know, but I'm telling you, Jim, the
It's
basis
not
of
something fun.
liberty and freedom is private property, whether it's land or an ostrich. We have to protect private property.
Right on.
All right,
How many
buddy.
birds they kill? I saw a video with all the
I
dead
don't know,
birds.
but I saw a video with they were covering them up and I'm like, why are you covering them up? I mean, they're already
Yeah.
dead. So,
Yeah. All right, what else?
that's about it.
Speaking of killing livestock, the Bovaer methane reduction feed additive is killing dairy cows in Denmark, apparently. Denmark is the first country to have a methane tax on livestock, and I believe this methane feed additive to reduce methane in cattle
Correct.
was um, mandated, right? And so these
Correct.
dairies had to give this feed additive to their cattle, and their cows start dropping
That's right. And
dead.
and some of them are very, very sick and will not recover.
Yeah. So there you go.
Fun. Oh, the climate stuff. Isn't it fun?
That's the thing. The thing to remember about that, because of course Jacqueline Wilson was in the news because she's somebody pushing back on the meat packer investigation. So I just posted her tweet where she called JBS a nice family-run organization,
Oh my
family-run business,
gosh. Did she really?
and and anyway, so I went to her website, just like look, on Google. I was trying to find that tweet that she had sent and where she called
Mhm.
JBS a family-run business. For
Mm.
the record, JBS is the most corrupt corporation in the world and the largest. I don't know. They went to prison, fined
Yeah.
$3 billion,
I mean, you can,
bribed 1,800 politicians. Anyway, whatever. But on her Enviro Smart Beef is what she calls her beef. It's Enviro Smart Beef.
great.
This whole thing, when you buy into any of this, when you say, just like the black shirt feeders, it's like if you have a methane digester and you're pulling methane off of the cattle, well,
Hmm.
you're just feeding into the fact that
Uh-huh.
you're saying that this methane that these cattle produce is bad for the environment. It's
Yeah.
not. It's
Yeah.
not doing anything to the climate any more than the
It's
methane that the
helping the climate.
buffalo were producing way before we were here. So,
It's all a part of the climate. It's
yeah.
the
But
circle of freaking life. But
right.
I want to remind you and I want to remind everybody else. And maybe this sounds harsh, Jim, because I watched a lot of that unfold on social media and I just sat back and watched it because I am not willing to throw my pearls to pigs. I'm just not going to do it. I'm not getting into the fray of all that nonsense. And you you're known by your fruit, right? And we know her fruit. We know all of that. And to say that JBS is a nice family run organization is absolute darkness. I mean, it's a lie. So,
Right. Anyway, we don't need to get into the fray on here, I
nope,
guess.
nope.
That's what we do. I guess.
Well, we can a little bit, but don't get too deep because I'm not participating in that. We
Oh,
have a
that's
lot of people that need defending in their property rights, and you know what? She might be one of them one day, and we've got to defend her too because even though we all have our differences, if we're going to adhere to the foundation of our beliefs, we got to defend those that we hate. I mean,
and I did get kind of snarky on the whole people who are saying this isn't the time on the because I posted the McDonald's saying and like where were you when McDonald's I mean it was less than a year ago I think
absolutely,
McDonald's
absolutely.
this is suing the beef packers. It's like, well, how come nobody said it wasn't the time back then, because cattle prices were high then too. It's like it's the time. We're just a few months into this administration and we finally have a USDA and possibly DOJ that isn't completely corrupted by lobbyists, so it's the time.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, man.
Okay, buddy.
We hit it all. Go to
We
lonesomlands.com, click on support.
We got a surprise coming up. We got a surprise coming up.
No, you never know if
Don't
we do
miss
or
it.
not.
No, it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Um, but yeah, I'm shipping out a lot of merch. It's taken up a lot of my time, but I love it. Thank you for all the orders. The hats are back ordered, and I'm sending out emails trying to get people notified because I've shipped their orders and I haven't shipped their hats. I got new hats coming for the hopefully by Black Friday time of year. Never wanted to get into that whole retail deal, but here we are.
Here we are.
Thanks, everybody.
Adios.